Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride. And today we are talking about the new leadership attachment from the Fire and the Night. It is the Elvenking. So it is a title, and it has action. And it's also attached to a Sylvan hero. Then it has action. Exhaust the Elvenking and return a Sylvan ally you control to your hand to ready attached hero. So, David, what do you think about this attachment?
I love this attachment, but before I get talking a little bit more about it, I just wanted to let our viewers and listeners know that Grant and I decided to put together these deck archetype shows where we attack cards that would really only fit into a certain deck type. We kind of learned our lesson with Boots of Erebor, or Boots from Erebor, where we have to, which is a card that really only works in Hobbit and Dwarf decks. And so over the next few episodes, we're really tackling cards that make sense really only in Sylvan decks, and specifically that Sylvan deck archetype where we are bouncing Sylvans back into your hand or in and out of play all the time. And so in that vein, the Elvenking really only makes sense to play in a Sylvan deck. It's really a card designed to magnify that effect, where you can bring Elvenking, where you put Elvenking on one of your heroes, and then you exhaust Elvenking, and you can pull an ally into your hand. That way, you're not reliant on drawing a tree people, drawing faint voices, drawing quicker than sight, or drawing island to mid perils. You can bring the card back into your hand whenever you really want, and that, I think, for this deck is important, because you may not have in your hand one of those events. Plus, it's an event and it only works once. To be able to continually bring a card back in your hand is phenomenal. And I usually put this card on Celeborn, because Celeborn is he's just as good of a not just as good of a blocker, but he's almost a good defender as Thranduil, but he's also a better attacker than Thranduil. So to use him multiple times a turn is really great, or a round, I guess, is really great. So, if you bring in the Nath Guide, and then the Nath Guide doesn't exhaust a quest because of Galadriel's ability, and then you pick Celeborn to not exhaust because of the Nath Guide's ability, then you can exhaust to defend using Celeborn, and then you can exhaust the Elvenking to bring the Nath Guide back into your hand, and then you can use Celeborn to attack. So you're really getting a huge action advantage from that permanent attachment, and the attachment really is one of the things that makes the deck go. You can play the deck without the Elvenking, but it is well worth it to have it on the board, and really accelerates your board state. But outside of Sylvan deck, this card is useless. There's really not, you'd have to have a Sylvan hero in play, which is fine. People can use Sylvan heroes outside of Sylvan decks. That's fine, but you have to be able to bring a Sylvan ally back in your hand, and that's the thing. And some people may play 3 or 4 Sylvan allies in their hand. Maybe somebody has Haldir ally, or somebody has ally Legolas who's Sylvan, and but you wouldn't want to bring him back into your hand, or maybe the Galadon Archer or something, but to play Elvenking just for those 2 or 3 cards that you may have in your deck seems to be a waste. So outside of a Sylvan deck, I think that the Elvenking is almost useless. What do you think?
I agree with that. The Elvenking is a brilliant card for pulling back allies that you don't want to keep in play at all times, such as Galleon, that was just not long since recorded. It's a perfect target for that because it costs that ally costs you nothing. You get to pull it back to your hand and ready up one of your heroes. You get ready up the hero that's attached it with Elvenking. Prime example, if you reveal one of the treacheries that exhaust a hero right at the beginning of the quest, before you even have planning, like during the setup, because I've had that, a hero has been exhausted because it's had no resources to pay for
right, for whatever reason.
The treachery event, the treachery that's happened requires you to remove one resource from each hero or exhaust it. I think it was all 5 skills from the Hunt for Golem.
That sounds about right.
And with this, you don't actually have to worry because all you have to do is pay for Elvenking, and then you can then pull back, which costs you 1, play Galleon that costs you nothing, bring back Galleon with Elvenking to ready the attached hero, then play Galleon again because it costs you nothing.
Right. And that's the beauty of this guy.
Yeah.
Is that you get to I was seeing if I could find that card that you were talking about. Yep.
And I love its flavor text. In a great hall with pillars hewn out of the living stone sat the Elvenking on a chair carven wood.
I think the Elvenking, I think this card is referring to Thranduil, but you can make anybody the Elvenking anyways.
Yes.
I think Thranduil is actually the only elf that's referred to as the king of, even though arguably Elrond and Celeborn, the males there, have more power, and obviously Galadriel has probably more power than all of them. But they're not referred to as the king in any way, shape, or form.
No, Thranduil is king of the Sylvan elves of Mirkwood.
Right. He's
Then you have the Sylvan and Noldor elves of Lothlorien,
right,
which are ruled by Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Lord Elrond of Rivendell, and then you've obviously got Círdan the Shipwright, who oversees the Noldor in the Grey Havens.
Mm-hmm.
He's technically a lord. So
what's better, king or lord?
Well, in sense, they all have the same power over their people. So it's just a matter of semantics.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Elrond is pretty much the go-to for the Western elves.
Mm-hmm.
He is the ruler of the elves in the West.
Right.
So the Noldor elves all go to Elrond. And then after you reach the Misty Mountain, that's when the split happens.
Mm-hmm. It's like the natural border between the two kingdoms.
Yeah, and then you've got like the 2 lots of Sylvan elves. Obviously, you've got Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn, who reside in Lothlorien. And then you've got obviously King Thranduil, who dwells in Mirkwood. And the elves of Mirkwood don't really leave the Elven halls unless specifically directed by Thranduil. Like Legolas was told to leave the Elven halls to go to the Council of Elrond. In that sense, but they don't have much dealings with each. The Elven King doesn't have much dealings with the people in Lothlorien. There's like been a divide over the years that's just grown.
What I do know is that Thranduil doesn't have one of the 3 rings.
No,
So
he does not.
Círdan had a ring and gave it to Gandalf, and then
Yes.
Elrond has a ring, and
Yes.
Lady Galadriel has a ring, and so Celeborn doesn't have a ring either, but he's married to Galadriel. So, and Thranduil doesn't have anything, so he gets the title king, but everybody else gets a thing. So,
His title
good for
is,
Thranduil.
His title's like the same title as the Steward of Gondor.
Right.
You can make anybody the Elven King or the Steward of Gondor.
Right. And that's good because we come full circle right back to the game where you can make anybody you want Steward of Gondor and anybody you want the Elven King.
Well, no, it's got to be the Elven King has to be attached to a Sylvan.
A Sylvan. You're right.
Unfortunately.
Well, what I was going to say is that, somebody like Haldir has that ability that you can hit somebody in the staging area before they make an attack, and that's not a limited combat action. That's just limited to how many times you can ready the guy. So
is it?
I think so. Or is it one per?
Just give us a minute and I'll check that out. I'll be Lorian. Where are you? Limit once per round for his combat action.
So that's a bummer.
Disregard what David just said.
Right. This is like the Bilbo episode where I'm wrong the whole way through. So I guess the point is that, inside this deck, it makes it really good. But I think outside, when you're trying to wedge the Elven King into a deck, it just doesn't go. That's really what I'm trying to, make the point.
Well, Haldir would still make a good target for the Elven King because he's got that 2 willpower and the 3 attack.
Right. He would be good to use his ability and then just make a natural attack.
Yeah. So you could quest with him, combat action, then attack with him.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making the use out of these better stats.
Right. In the end, it's just really good that you have a card that's always in play where you can pull the Sylvans back into your hand for whatever reason, because a lot of all the Sylvans that are in the deck, in the specific deck that we're talking about, they always have a when enters play effect. In the end of the game, you can use Elven King to pull Rumil back into your hand and then play him again using Thranduil's action, and that's like crazy, or you can pull the archer. You can exhaust. This is how I've learned to play this card. Okay, so you put it on Celeborn. Celeborn has stats, so the Elven King is on Celeborn. You can use him to defend. You can use another character to defend. Pick Haldir of Lorien, the ally. So he's got really good stat line. So Haldir of Lorien defends. You pull the defender back into your hand using Elven King, and then using Thranduil's ability, you can cast him back out, call him back out into play, pay for him, and now he's ready again. And so now you've readied your hero, and you have a ready ally ready to go, the same ally. Or if you do the same thing except with the Greenwood Archer, now you've readied not only Celeborn, but then you've readied Thranduil, or you've readied Galadriel. Oh no, you can't ready Galadriel; she's not a Sylvan. But you ready Thranduil, and he can attack, or he can defend a second time.
With the Greenwood Archer, you can ready Galadriel.
Does it say ready a hero? Right? Okay. Yeah. Right. So I mean. And so you could use, Galadriel a second time. You can use her not only to commit to the quest by giving her willpower, but then you can use her ability to draw the card and reduce your threat. And so that Elven King becomes one of those cards because it's permanent that you can really dig deep into and figure out a lot of different combinations to use the Elven King to accelerate your deck and to use him to the best advantage that you have. I mean, that it can't be overstated. You'll have to see it played, but I mean, just know that there's a million different ways that you can use the Elvenking that are very beneficial. Should we ring this guy then? No?
Yeah, let's ring him.
Okay, so just to let the audience know, for these cards that we're talking about that have to do with this, for this deck, for this specific like Slippery Silvan deck, Silvan's going in and out. Grant and I decided that we were going to ring this and ring these cards in two different ways. We were going to ring it against the whole card pool, and then ring it as a card within the deck in terms of how good the card is in the deck. So, Grant, what do you think on a scale from 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, outside the Silvan deck, I'd rate it at a possible 7 outside of a Silvan deck.
I would go worse than you. I would ring it a 9 because it's only useful in a Silvan deck. Well, that's my opinion. I'm going almost trash.
You see, I can see its value. If you're running some Silvan allies and you are running any Silvan hero and you've got access to it, you could run it, and it may be the case of a dead hero or a badly damaged hero. So I can see the use of it in that sense, so I'm going to rate it a 7. In this deck, I'm going to rate it a 1 because of the fact that it is so useful. You've got so many Silvans that you can come into play that you can ready in every phase, pretty much if you wanted to.
Yeah, and I almost dropped the 1 on this guy because it's so. Of the attachments that are in this deck, there's 4 attachments that are run in this deck. There's Nenya, the Steward, Olorien, and Elvenking. I think the Elvenking is probably the least important to get out in terms of what you would need to make the deck successful.
Yeah.
Because there's so many events and other cards that pull things back into your hand. So because of that, I was like, I can't drop a 1 on every single one of these attachments. But it is super awesome to have a permanent card that pulls these things back into your hand. So I have to go with a 2. So it's almost the extremes for me. 9 to a 2.
Well, good job. I've already put you 2 in the market.
You're predicting me. So join us again as we talk about more cards from the Lord of the Rings card game. Have a great day. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.